All right, oh yeah, it does work. Good morning. I got two mics now. So I'm little, so it's got to be broadcast out. So, well, thank you, Christine, and thank you, Gary and Bonfils-Stanton, for having us come out here, and thank you to all of you for sharing your Wednesday morning with us. As Christine mentioned, I am a market researcher by trade. I have spent the last 20 years helping organizations better understand their target audiences. I also do program evaluation. And I was asked by the Wallace Foundation to take a look at the organizations that they were working with, the Wallace Excellence Awards that Christine was talking about. There were 54 organizations, as she mentioned, and it was interesting because they covered a variety of art forms. There were different sizes, from $1.5 million to over $20 million. But they all wanted to build their audiences. Some of them had success, and some of them didn't. Most of them were going after audiences they hadn't had luck with in the past. And like I said, some had success, some didn't, some had mixed results. And I led a team of researchers to find out why. Why is it that some organizations had success and what didn't? Are there things that they're doing right that other organizations can learn from? And it was great. We were actually able to do it pretty well because all of the organizations, they shared with us their box office data, they shared with us their ticket data, their online activity. They also all did formal research and evaluation throughout. So you could get the audience perspective throughout. So you could take a real hard, rigorous look and say what's working, what's not. We did interviews with the staff. They're very extensive. And the real goal of this, as Christine alluded to, they want to help the organizations that they can find. Instead of acting on hunches on what might work or what might not work, act on real research-based insights. And today, I'm going to focus on things that work no matter who you are. Most of these organizations were in large cities. Actually, I think they all were in large cities. But they were different sizes, and you'll see that. And the practices that I'm going to talk about are ones that work for everybody. Now, from the 54, we took a subset of 10, and we selected them for case study. You can see it's a real mixed bag, right? You've got some performing arts organizations, you've got visual arts, a small art school in Philadelphia, Fleischer Art Memorial, Contemporary Jewish Museum, real mixed bag, big performing arts, Seattle Opera, Pacific Northwest Ballet. And actually, I should tell you, when we started this work, we were tasked, what my job was to go to each of these and do individual case studies. What works in the ballet world? What works in the opera world? Because these are different, right? But what we found was surprising. There certainly are things that work for certain audiences. You're going to go after millennials, you do certain things differently than if you're going after older adults. But we also found a whole set of practices that worked no matter who you were, no matter what organization you were, no matter what audience you were pursuing. Why is that? And once we started to analyze the causes of that, we realized, of course, they're diverse organizations, but they all had a common objective. And that objective was to bring in people that they hadn't had luck with before, that had not been coming in, that were unfamiliar with their organizations and unfamiliar with the work that they present. This is a huge challenge. When you think about this, I mean, there's not a lot of research in the US, unfortunately, but there is in Europe and the UK. I guess UK is still part of Europe, but there's research there about how people become arts patrons over a lifetime, and it takes years. Nobody wakes up and decides they're going to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It just doesn't happen. Your family takes you, you go with school groups, friends take you. This is a process that takes years. And I was just floored by some of the grant applications, because they all look like this. Audience A is really important to us. We've never had luck with Audience A. You don't know anything about Audience A. We'll be building Audience A by 10%, 20%, 30%. They want to jumpstart this process that takes years. We're asking people to change their habits, develop new sensibilities. Okay. Now, they had a common goal, and when they went to do this, when they went to attract new people that were not familiar with the art they presented or with their organizations, they found common barriers. And the biggest one was relevance. That gets thrown around a lot, that term relevance. And when we looked at it up close and looked at the research that they did with new audiences, because most of them went, when they said, we're going to go after newly retired people, they would actually do research with that group and talk to them. And it was interesting. The relevance aspect wasn't, ballet is not relevant to my life. I know ballet, I hate ballet. It was, I have no idea what it is. I don't know what goes out there. It's sort of like, think about these worlds that I'm sure they're all worlds that we don't know. I bet NASCAR is really amazing. But I have no idea, I don't know, maybe. I'm probably missing out, right? And or the sport of cricket, or MMA. There are all these things that are I don't know, but you can't get excited about stuff that you don't know. That's what it was. It wasn't like they were just pushing it away. They just didn't know. And I use this image of the castle on the hill because whenever they talk to people, this was the image that came up in their minds. That is what you put on the Denver Museum of Art. It is, they're doing fine, they're up there, I don't know what goes on up there, but it's not for me, and I don't see myself up there. And of course, when that happens, you get other things. People feel that they don't know enough about the art to appreciate it. And it's really amazing. I'm going to embarrass somebody tonight because I thought of this. It was so funny. A lot of these organizations wanted to go after educated people. Educated people don't like to be embarrassed. When Jessica was handed the Y list last night, she was like, oh brother. She does not want to be embarrassed by showing a lack of knowledge. So it's really tough. That's a huge barrier. It's very intimidating. But, and this sort of summarizes sort of all the work that I've done for Wallace. There is a way through these barriers. And this successful initiative has made building relationships a sustained priority. As those words come out of my mouth, like I actually hate saying it. You know why? Because this is so abstract. Like, what's not to like, right? This, I mean, you've heard these words before, right? It's like mom and apple pie or Taylor Swift, you know, like, there's nothing you can't like about it. But let me tell you, I say that not to make fun of my work, but to tell you that when the rubber hits the road, when it comes to making, building relationships and keeping it a priority in your organizations, the case studies that we wrote about did it. It was not an easy journey, and we did write about that. So we go way beyond this cute, you know, so for a summary slide it has to be this, but I want you to know there's real detail in those case studies. Now what they found is that, a couple things. You need a sustained organizational commitment. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Donna Walker-Kuhn, the audience diversification expert. She has this wonderful phrase she says a lot. She says, audience building isn't like sipping a cup of tea. You know, and she has this image of an English person just sipping a cup of tea, reading a paper. No, you're firing. If it's going to work, you fire on all cylinders. Programs where you say, hey, you know what, let's just get some millennials in here. Not going to work. It's got to be over time because these things, remember, this is a process that takes years. It's not going to happen in one season. Yes, you can get them to come for one day, but if you want repeat patrons, that real base, and I'll show you how some of them are doing that. And now there's two sides to building a relationship. One of them is not surprising to me, I guess, and I sort of expected this. Organizations that were successful, they learned about the target audience, and they did it through research and they evaluated their own programs. If they were lucky enough that a new audience came to their door, they surveyed them, they talked to them and said, what's working for you, what's not? Can you find your way around? How can we get more people like you to come in here? Also, and this was, I guess, surprising to me, but smart. Many of these organizations, remember that castle on the hill? Organizations that were successful helped the audience get to know the organization. A lot of times they put up these barriers unintentionally. You know, they had a clunky website. They're like, we want millennials, but they have a clunky website. Well, millennials learn about the world through their fingers. That's how it works. Or they weren't really forthcoming with information. It wasn't easy to find out about the organization. And I'll show you some great examples of organizations that said, we are going to be so easy to know, it will be hard not to know us. That worked well. It also, of course, took time and follow-through. I can't stress enough how this takes years and persistence. And I'm going to talk about two organizations today, Pacific Northwest Ballet, Fleischer Art Memorial. It's going to look like it's all wrapped up neat in a bow. If you go look in the case studies, you'll see how they really floundered for a while and made a lot of mistakes and didn't get upset. They said, okay, this is what we expect. This is part of the process. It's going to take years. What we want is a big thing, so it's not going to work right away. They got frustrated, absolutely, but they kept going. I want to say, too, one final thing before I move on. A lot of times in this work, and when we read about audience development, so much of it is focused on the tactics. Oh, there was this really cool kiosk that people could take pictures about and tweet and all this, whatever it is. Because it's really fun to read about that stuff. But don't be fooled by that stuff. Unless it's part of a broader relationship building initiative, it's not going to work. It's just a waste of your time and your money. That stuff can work if it's plugged into a broader relationship initiative. Okay, luckily, now these are the 9 practices, and they're in that book that you can get if you don't have it now, Road to Results. These are 9 practices that we found helped people build those relationships and keep it on the front burner of their organizations. That's what this is all about. Remember I said this. It's about building relationships a sustained priority. That's it. And these 9 steps are about that, and I'll talk about them. Now, I'm sure these aren't the only 9, and this is not supposed to be some kind of step-by-step, paint-by-numbers audience development. But what I can tell you is, without a doubt, is that, and we had data to really prove it and look at it, that organizations, the more they did these things, the better off they were. And they didn't do all 9, but the more they did it, the better off they were, like I said. Okay. Now the first one, I'm actually going to go through, not one by one, but pretty much like that. You know, when I started this work, I actually thought that we were going to see that great results would be the result of great plans. Like that would be the starting point. We have a plan. Actually, the starting point for the most successful initiatives is what we call recognizing when change is needed. What does that mean? That means that the initiative was started not by somebody saying, hey, you know what we should do, like Donna Walker-Kuhn sipping her tea. It was somebody saying, oh my gosh, we are in real trouble if we do not take care of this. They looked at, like, for example, like I'm going to talk about this guy, Peter Bowl. Peter Bowl is the artistic director of the Pacific Northwest Ballet in Seattle. And he looked at that chart that Christine just showed you. One of the bottom lines is ballet. It's the worst. And if you actually look at the numbers of young people, 18 to 34, it's a disaster. Not to use the word, it's a disaster. I'm going to put that in my tweet. Sick! Exclamation point. Sorry. No, but it is a disaster. I mean, it's unbelievable. And Peter Bowl said to me, look, he's not a statistician, but he's like, there's only one conclusion you can draw from this data. We will not have ballet in 80 years' time if this continues. There's no other conclusion that you can draw. But he didn't panic. What he did do is he used that energy and got the whole organization really mobilized around this initiative to bring in teens and young adults. It's been wildly successful. And part of it is because the whole organization is behind it. It is seen as mission critical. I mean, he really is scared that ballet will disappear. And if you look at the chart that Christine shows, that's what it is. Sometimes, though, other organizations saw other things. They saw a drastic drop-off in subscriptions, or they had heard other things that said, we can't continue. I know the Clay Studio in Philadelphia, they do classes, and it's a very interactive organization. They said, hey, we're not seeing new faces. And a lot of the old faces are sort of leaving. So this kind of mission-critical observation is really needed to build that fire. But that actually, once it was built, really helped organizations. Now, Pacific Northwest Ballet, they actually did a lot of research, and I'll talk about some of it. One of the things that they heard, though, with teens and young adults was it really did come down to relevance. And what they said, I'll read this for those in the back that are craning their necks. They feel ballet, teens and young adults, is for their grandparents. They care about hearing a musical group. They care about certain films. I want ballet to be in that category. When he said that to me, I thought, well, good luck, brother. But he has actually done it. I mean, he has made ballet. If you ever, I know Seattle's close. If you go to Pacific Northwest Ballet, it's wonderful. I mean, the performances are just top caliber. The intermission is heartwarming because you will see young audiences enjoying the ballet like you don't see in any other art form. Now, back then, it wasn't the case. A lot of times we're actually asked, and I get this question the most, we know we need to build an audience, but what audience do we build? Who do we go after? Do we go after millennials? Do we go after families? Retirees, we got a lot of those. And there's no magic formula. But I can say that there were 2 criteria that predicted success. There were 2 things needed to happen. One is, as in the case of Pacific Northwest Ballet, the leaders of the organization absolutely have to believe that it's important. If the leaders of the organization, actually this is Peter Bowl, he's hosting, this is so cute, and I don't mean that in a condescending way, but this is their sold out teen night at the ballet, which they never thought they could have something like this. Every year about 200 kids come, and they make their way to the main stage as well. His involvement in this makes sure that it stays on the organization's radar, absolutely. There are times when leaders don't think it's a priority, and that's sad. Sometimes curators say, should we be going after families? Is that who we are? And they hold back. I can think of another organization that actually succeeded, a classical music organization. They brought in actually thousands of newcomers. And they realized when they talked to them that the marketing that they were doing didn't speak their language of a newcomer. It was inaccessible. They were like, I don't know how to pick where I'm going to go or what I'm going to do. So they came up with a whole new marketing language for these folks. The artistic director saw it and said, well, this is dumbing us down. This isn't the language that we use. Well, no, it's not the language you use with our current audiences, but we know that we want to get new people. That initiative dried up, and it was unfortunate. Okay, so one piece is that leaders have to really think that it's important. The other piece is that they need to have some kind of experience or evidence that they can satisfy the audience. Don't just go willy-nilly and pick an audience because you think it's important. People saw somewhere in their data, I can think of like at the Contemporary Jewish Museum, the executive director, she'd been at the Whitney and said, families, they have a huge family program at the Whitney with the kind of exhibitions we do here, we can do that there. So they really had some evidence somewhere. Steppenwolf Theater Company heard in their research that there were some opportunities that they weren't taking advantage of. When people did that, when they found that evidence and also had an audience that the leaders thought was important, huge, huge success. Now, once an organization decided to go after a certain audience, their next step was to say, why aren't they coming? And this, it actually does turn out there's a really great formula to figure out why they're not coming and what kinds of strategies you should use to get them to come. This is wonderful. This actually comes from the RAND Corporation, commissioned by Wallace. And here it is. Some of the organizations were going after, well, actually, the kinds of barriers you should target really depend on the audience inclination. So some organizations were going after audiences that were inclined to participate. So maybe they'd gone in the past, but they had children or they moved out of the city into the suburbs. So now location, driving was difficult, it was too far, parking. They were inclined to go. They didn't have anything against it, but maybe it got expensive for them. Maybe something else happened. Those organizations found that if they targeted practical barriers like opening times or format or making it lower cost, they could really get a lot of people to walk in the door. A lot of the organizations were going after disinclined audiences. These are folks that just have no interest in your organization or the art form. You could put on a performance in the lobby of their building and they still won't go. You know these guys, right? So if you want to get those, if you make it free, they're still not going to come. And I actually can think of organizations that did that. And a lot of museums do that, and other organizations, but I see it in museums a lot, free passes. The audience isn't inclined, they're not going to come. Those things fail, and they fail all the time. I was talking to Julie Kreis at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and she's like, why do we keep doing this to ourselves? Everywhere I go, this is what we do. But no, what you have to do to get that audience is change their perception. So change their perceptions first in order to get them to come. Now, some organizations were working with trying to get increased frequency with the current audience. For that to happen, what they did was focus on the experience. They figured out why are they coming in the first place, and can we make that an even richer experience for them? Now, not all organizations follow this scheme. Sometimes some organizations going after disinclined audiences tried practical barriers, never worked, or rarely worked. Those that actually followed this framework had great success. I want to turn now to one of a real game changer for our organizations. Organizations that did this well had the greatest success. This actually was so important that Wallace commissioned actually a separate work that you have, taking out the guesswork. And taking out the guesswork, what does that mean? Like I'd said, most of the organizations were going after publics, groups that they hadn't had luck with in the past. They didn't, so many of them, they know their current audience so well. They know how to talk to them, know what makes them tick. But these new audiences, they had no idea, and what do? We have no idea. They didn't let that lack of experience get in the way. What they did is they did research up front to say, what's going to work with these people? What kind of communications? When they look at our brochures, what do they see? That stuff was great. Now, audience research, smart organizations used it for three things. First, to learn what's to attract audiences. How do we get them to come here? Identify how to pique their interest, and it isn't always what you think. And in fact, I can think of they were probably when they had a guess, it was usually wrong. Not because they lacked knowledge, but it's hard to know because these are unknown audiences. Pacific Northwest Ballet, for example, is a wonderful organization, and it's, for those of you that don't know it, a $23 million ballet company in Seattle. They do 100 performances a year, about 8 ballets or 8 repertories. And an audience of about 250,000. And they are unusual in that they have this wonderful, wonderful repertoire of sort of the classic storybook ballets, your Coppelias, Swan Lake, Romeo and Juliet, Giselle. They are known for that and Balanchine, all the classics. But also they're really known for, on the other side, the really edgy stuff. Not just Twyla Tarp or Jerome Robbins, but William Forsythe, Ulysses Stubb, really contemporary, relevant stuff. Now remember, I said they are going to go after young adults and teens. They said, hey, you know what? let's not show them as stuffy, like boring, like Romeo and Juliet. Let's show them like, Ulysses stuff, like one flat thing where the people come out in sweatshirts and they're banging on, tables and no one knows what's going to happen next. They did research with teens and young adults, and that scares teens and young adults. No, it really does, because look, if you've never been to the ballet before, you have no idea what to expect. So they were like, look, is there intermission? Those are their questions. Is there an intermission? But if there's a story they can follow, and if it's a story that they know, like Sleeping Beauty or Romeo and Juliet, all the better. And it was interesting. After that, PNB went back and looked at their audience data, and they figured out that's exactly where they were going for the first timers. So good thing PNB did their research, because they knew exactly what foot to lead on with these guys. The other thing, actually, I don't have it here, but they used research to evaluate how their programs were doing. Okay. Now, Pacific Northwest Ballet did research with teens and young adults when they said, what is keeping teens and young adults away? And they did focus groups. Focus groups are moderated discussions where you bring in people of a certain demographic group and you talk. What do you think of our art form? What do you know about us? What do you do? What do you look for when you go out, etc.? And the focus groups that Pacific Northwest Ballet, I'm going to probably call them PNB throughout, that PNB did. Now, I'm sure there are things that we would expect. Oh, ballet's stuffy, it's elitist. But there were also things that they didn't expect. Pacific Northwest Ballet found that teens and young adults felt that they wouldn't be welcome there, which hurt. That really hurt. Peter Bowl, the artistic director, Ellen Walker, the marketing director, now the executive director, were sitting, and you can actually observe focus groups, and they saw this. They try so hard to be an inclusive organization, and all these folks thought that, no, elitist, stuffy, they don't want me here. It's a closed society, and when I get there, I'll feel like I don't fit in. Now, if you do this work, you're gonna hear it, but it's based on perceptions. Remember, they're talking to people, they recruited people that weren't going to the ballet. So of course, this is what you're going to hear, and it's hard to hear, but they listen to it. They also heard that for teens and young adults, they're only going to go see a performance if they know the performers in advance or can find out about the performers in advance. So they look online. Now, PNB actually didn't have anything online. It didn't have, had sort of like dry stuff. No offense. Well, they said, actually, Ellen Walker, the director of marketing, said, our website, she saw it, she realized it's like Courtyard by Marriott. It's like the most boring website you can possibly imagine. She didn't see it, but through the eyes of these kids, that's what it is. So what they did, they took these insights, and also the intimidation. I feel like I'll have to know something about it to appreciate it. They took these insights and fed it into this huge strategy. They said, okay, we are hard to get to know. You don't know us. You don't think we want you here. Oh, we want you here, and we're going to show you we want you here. So they had teen night. This is Keon Gaines. It's a choreographer showcase, and it's teens only. No adults allowed. Not even Peter Bowl can go. Keon Gaines, he's a dancer. He's in his 20s, so it's okay. And they actually like it because it's nice. You can really relate to them and speak their language. What it is teen night is it's a preview. There's a choreographer showcase they do every year. They've done it for years. But now, 6 weeks before it gets shown to Seattle, teens get a preview. So teens are told, on no uncertain terms, you are special, you should come. They did $10 rehearsal previews. They did, this was great. They heard, of course, that, like I'd said, that teens and young adults will only go to a performance if they know something about it. But Pacific Northwest Ballet was so hard to get to know. They said, all right, let's just open up the doors. And they did it online. What they did is they had an intern walk around with a HD camera and a Mac. That's it. This intern, she was part-time, and just film what she saw. It's, actually the upper right one does not look like one of hers, but the other two have that low-budget look about it. There's no special lighting. She was just there, and she knows ballet, so she thought this would be a cool thing to share. And when things would just spontaneously happen in rehearsal, she was capturing it and sharing it. As Ellen Walker, the executive director, said, what we wanted to do was give them lots of ways in to see what we do every day. And if you actually go to their YouTube channel, they have a lot of professionally shot videos. But the stuff that actually gets the most views, in the millions, some of them, are these things that the intern shot. So they have like the Hollywood crew coming in with HD cameras and the intern with her Mac, right? And she's the one that's getting all the views. I think the first professional one is down, number 9. People love getting behind the scenes. This has gotten really great activity for them. Pacific Northwest, actually, and this is Peter Bowles' quote, this is why he says it's successful. It's what happens in the studio in a very honest way. It doesn't look edited or manufactured, it's what happens. Because it is. It is her just sitting around, she goes to the school, she goes to rehearsals. They also took a look at their advertising. I mean, their strategy for advertising, like many organizations, I mean, they have a wonderful, wonderful group of dedicated, longtime patrons. Older Seattle folks that have been going for years. And they know exactly how to talk to them. I mean, you look at this image, I mean, this image, I mean, showing the grandeur of the art form. How beautiful is this? I mean, the kind of thing, and Peter Bohl approves, he used to approve all these poses. They have to be perfect, absolutely perfect, poise, position, and stance. And if you look at her, you can see the years of study. You can see what she's doing, you can see the intensity in her face. That's if you're on the inner circle of ballet. But what if you see this and you're not in that inner circle? What do you see? This is what they heard in focus groups. And it's funny, Ellen Walker, the marketing director, she said, she's like, gosh, it really, if you don't know ballet, it is somebody in a weird pose. And they do look like they're in pain. If you're not part of that world, this does not invite you or let you in. She's looking away. She does not look friendly. Does that look like a fun night out? And it's like, and the big claim they have, opens this week, big deal, I mean, what is director's choice? People don't know what that is. So they said, okay, we have to have advertising that looks like, and the thing is, I should say, it's fun to laugh at this. If you do this work and you show a new audience, I mean, your marketing materials, you're going to get this. And you can't be afraid of it. I mean, and of course, luckily, Ellen just kept telling herself, I didn't design this for these kids. I didn't design this for these kids, and remembered that, and then took careful notes. How do I make advertising that gets these kids' attention? Instead of showing the grandeur of the art form, they changed their strategy. They gave people an expression that the audience could look into. Now you have people, in all of their advertising, all of it now. You see a performer. This is not a perfect stance. Peter Bohl would have given this the big kibosh before, the artistic director. Now Ellen reminds him, the executive director, remember, you were in the focus groups, you heard what they thought. We got to do this. And they show the dancers in their character. Romeo and Juliet are in a passionate embrace. They're not dancing, they're in a passionate embrace. She's looking at you. It really creates immediacy, it removes distance, it really makes it an exciting place. And a lot of the organizations did that. They had art that was just sort of stead and just not exciting, and they made it exciting and realized advertising has to look like advertising. That's actually Ellen's quote. They also plugged into this wonderful community called Teen Tix. Teen Tix, I don't know if Denver has a program like this. This is a program that sells $5 day of show tickets in Seattle. So these are tickets that would have gone unsold. Teens can walk up to the box office and they get seated anywhere. And teens are treated like royalty. They'll look at, there's not a teen section. Teens can sit, in the front row. They can sit wherever they want. Any ticket is $5 for a teen. But they do a lot more than that. Teen Tix is actually a community of teenagers. They're online, they have, I know people always say community, what does that mean? They do a lot of blogging, they share their posts, and actually what they do is they write reviews of the performances they see. So let me tell you, Pacific Northwest Ballet is down in those offices shaking hands. They actually have Teen Tix reviewers, and Teen Tix reviewers have access to the P&B press room, just like from a regular newspaper. They roll out the red carpet for the teens. Why do they do that? Because then the teens write reviews like this. The perfect beginner's performance, liquid lightning, ballet is not boring. Social psychologists have known for a long time that people will go to places where they know they'll see others like them. Here are teens telling other teens, you will like this. Just like when you go, like I was looking for a vacuum cleaner, and I was like, I need to find the people that have dogs, because we all have pet hair issues, right? I mean, if you look at me now, I have 6 or 7, right? So you look for a review of somebody that's like you, and this is exactly what Teen Tix does. Reviews that are written by people that they want to get. The other brilliant thing that they did to really kind of grease the palms of Teen Tix is they said, what teenager is going to feel comfortable writing a review of a ballet? I wouldn't as a grown adult, but so what they did is they created a workshop, a dance writing workshop at P&B, teaching the teenagers, the Teen Tix people, the Teen Tix bloggers, how to write a workshop. It had dance critics, it had staff, and it was just a free thing. Really wonderful. If I have to think of one phrase that describes Pacific Northwest Ballet, it is letting them in. Pacific Northwest Ballet has not changed who it is for a second. It's really funny, I was on a panel with the executive director a few months ago, and I said, what's changed about Pacific Northwest Ballet? Oh, the marketing, the outreach, oh my gosh, the communications. I said, what about the artistic offering? She's like, not a bit, not one bit. We have dug in our heels into who we are. but we're letting people in. And I love this quote by Michael Kaiser, who says when you want to get new audiences, he says, bold, surprising, transformational programming, not changing who we are, but being who we are and showing that in the best light, that's our best form of marketing. Take a look now at their results. They have had some just incredible results. This is actually just from the first 4 years, and this has gone on. And this is the number of tickets bought by teens. Not that their parents bought for them, but bought by a teen. So this is probably underestimated in terms of the number of teens growing. And also the number of ticket purchases by under 25 in that period was up 20%. And sustained participation, the number of people buying tickets to more than one performance has also gone up. One thing you'll see, I'm like running out of breath talking about what they did. Like, they did so much stuff. And if you read the case study, you'll realize that they were smart. They said, you know what, they may find us online, they may not find us online. We have to maybe do the teen night. We have to do all these other things. We have to give them many opportunities to find us. And this, another thing I stole from Donna Walker-Kuhn. Gosh, we're taping this, her lawyers, right? But she says you have to provide multiple ways in. Multiple ways in. And what she says is, look, if an audience isn't finding you today, don't be discouraged. What that means is the existing pathways aren't working for them. So you find new pathways. Maybe that means building familiarity in the way the Pacific Northwest Ballet did. It also can mean connecting to things that people already know. Minnesota Opera is another organization that we worked with. And opera is probably, of all art forms, has some real perceptual challenges, some real barriers. It's very intimidating. Well, Minnesota Opera actually blames this lady for the whole thing. Seriously. And what they did was really clever. So they realized there's an audience of educated female women. They looked in their ticket data, and they're like, this was this huge hole. They had programs for young people. Older people were fine. They were going to the opera. But what about middle-aged, educated women? They were not coming to the opera. So what they did was pretty unusual. They found a radio partner, and not your typical opera radio partner. This guy's named Ian Punnett, and he had a morning drive time talk show, and it was not about opera. It was about entertainment. So we talk about like the Kardashians. He would talk about what people wore at the Emmys, all this kind of. He had like banter with his wife. The billboards in Minnesota when I went to visit them, it's like him with like lipstick on his collar. Like this is but a really relatable guy who happens to love opera. And he would tell his audience, I love opera. He would tell them why. What he would do, he noticed that, he said, he noticed this with Minnesota Opera. He said, the advertisement that you uses doesn't give a way in to newcomers. In fact, it can turn them off. If they read that so-and-so just came back, pick an Italian or an Eastern European name of an opera singer, came back from a performance center, pick an opera hall that you don't know, repeating her triumph, that does not speak to anybody. And not only that, when you use that kind of language, people then say, oh, this is for an audience that knows what those terms mean. So it's not like that they don't get it, but they think this is for a different crowd, because I will not appreciate what's on offer here, because I don't know who that performer is. I don't know what that opera is. So he said, let's connect to things that people already know. Not dumbing it down, but show, like opera is so, look at it, it's like over the, what is more over the top and crazy than opera? It's like no wonder they paired him up with like a gossip guy, because that's what opera is, right? The stories are so crazy. So here's he did an ad for the Pearl Fishers. And instead of talking about really getting into the sort of musical terms about it, here's what he said. This year's season kicks off with a love triangle that turns deadly in Bizet's The Pearl Fishers, an extravaganza of music, fashion, and dance, with colorful sets by British fashion icon Zandra Rhodes, Tony Award winner Jesus Garcia, and the international sensation Isabel Barakdarian shine above the shimmering score by the composer of Carmen. Stuff you can relate to. And they got women to come by the thousands. Many of them actually became subscribers. It was wonderful. It wasn't, once they sort of had this bridge, this gives them a reason to go. The ads that they had been doing didn't give them a reason to go. Who wouldn't get excited when the opera is presented in this way? Okay, I want to turn now to an organization. I've talked about some opera, I've talked about ballet. We're going to go to the other end of the spectrum. This is an organization that tackled the challenge that if we're not dealing with it now, we will. How do we adjust to changing demographics? How do we, when the world changes around us, how do we stay relevant? It's a very different organization. It's an art school in Philadelphia, in Southeast Philadelphia. And that's important because Southeast Philadelphia, it is traditionally been the point of entry for newly arrived groups. When you first come to the country, that Southeast Philadelphia is where newly arrived immigrants grow. Brookings Institution actually has said it's one of the most dynamic, it's like sort of a microcosm of the changes that are going to be happening in the US, and sort of a crystal ball of what's happening. Now, it was founded at the turn of the 20th century by a yarn factory guy, Samuel Fleischer. And he founded it because what he wanted was he wanted the people that worked in his factory and their children to have a place to go to create art. And to create it alongside other people in the community. Now they have 4,000 today, 4,000 adults and young people, adults and young people in free and low-cost classes, and visitors to the gallery, 8,500. And it's a good-sized organization, $2.5 million budget. Now, its mission had been to make art, and still is, to make art accessible to everyone, regardless of economic means, background, or artistic experience. And that mission, they were actually really good with that. They were able to act on that for quite some time. Throughout the 20th century, Southeast Philadelphia, you know the groups that were there, right? It was, Russians, Jewish, German, Irish, Italian. Those people were actually going to Fleischer, and they were going in large numbers, which was wonderful. But something happened towards the end of the 20th century and has continued today. Those European immigrants, you know what they want to do, right? You may not know the area, so if you're in Southeast Philadelphia, you're an immigrant, you want to move to Center City, or you want to move to the suburbs of South Jersey. That means you've made it. And that's what they did. And who replaced them? A lot of groups from Southeast Asia and Mexico. And which is fine. Fleischer welcomed them. But the problem is they were not going to Fleischer. So now the immigrants in the neighborhood were not going to Fleischer. Instead, who was Fleischer getting? They were getting people from the wealthy suburbs of New Jersey, children of original Fleischer students. They were getting people from wealthier parts of Philadelphia, whereas people in Southeast Philadelphia were not coming. This was a real challenge to the mission of Fleischer, and something that really lit a fire under them and said, we have to get these folks in here. How are we going to do it? We don't know anything about them. Many of them don't speak English. Many of them are undocumented, but they're going to be taking classes at Fleischer Art Memorial. Just so you can get an idea of what they were trying to do, they're sort of their typical student, and this is sort of like the typical art patron everywhere. Every time I do audience research, she shows up. The white female, and we love her, right? We love her. But she, kids have moved out, 40s, 50s, 60s, college educated, she has time and money now. And Fleischer loves her too. Fleischer loves having her, but they wanted to be more inclusive. So she can come, but they also want to make it more inclusive. And the community prospects, completely different. Racially, they were culturally mixed, foreign, many of them were foreign born. They were mostly younger, and a lot of them had young children. They didn't have college education. I should say too, the median income in that neighborhood is $29,000. So that gives you an idea. Median family household income is $29,000. So that gives you an idea. A lot of restaurant workers, the folks that keep the town running, right? And they didn't really know Fleischer. And Fleischer had some great ideas. They said, you know what? All of them they're all working parents and stuff. They have young kids. So let's create family programs. Great idea. So summer camp, weekend workshops, after school programs. The problem was they then decided to shop the idea around to some of the community organization leaders of organizations that serve these constituents, and they said, this is dead in the water. Great ideas, but it's dead in the water if it's coming from Fleischer, which was a real smack in the face, a little splash of cold water. And the reason was, look, they don't know who you are and they don't care who you are. And art is actually important to a lot of them. They have rich artistic traditions, but they don't care about Fleischer, and you've never really shown that you've cared about them. So that was really hard to hear. And they said, okay, we're going to do research. Like I said, research was so important. They took out the guesswork and said, what do we do to get these folks so that they feel welcome here at Fleischer? And they heard three things. If you want, this is from their perspective. They did focus groups and they did talking with community leaders and such. And they boiled it down to, here are three things you need to do. Come to us. We might hesitate to go to you. A lot of them are undocumented. It's that castle on the hill again. It's scary. They're not going to just walk in the door. But if you come to us and show us who you are and that you want us there, we might be, that might warm us up a bit. And show us. Fleischer Art Memorial, what even is that? Like, I didn't know what it was when I first started this work. Fleischer Art Memorial, actually, it's an art school. It's an art school. And, but they don't know what goes on there, and the course catalog was written, it had things like expressions and pointillism, and I don't even know what that is, but imagine if English isn't your first language, but even things like silk screening, if English isn't your first language, you don't know what that is. So show us the work, show us what you do. and welcome us. If we come, and these actually are quotes that they heard in the focus groups, and I can even tell you, a woman said in one of the focus groups, it's like you're lifted above us. But if you let us know you're accessible, we'll be there. They talked a lot about sometimes they would enter buildings and people would see they couldn't speak English, so they would ignore them. The receptionist wouldn't want to kind of deal with it. So you have to get through those barriers. So they started to do those things. This is a set of insights that they took and launched a huge strategy. They said, okay, we're going to go to them, we're going to show them what we do, and if they come, they are going to feel so welcome. We're going to make it a welcoming place, and it's going to be authentic. Here's what they did. So, just an example of some of their programs, and again, just like, Pacific Northwest Ballet, they didn't just do one thing, it was multiple things, recognizing we've got to give them many opportunities to meet us. Color Wheels is a mobile art studio, and they used to actually take it, they still do actually. It serves about 2,000 people a year, and they just show up, sometimes unannounced, sometimes in collaboration with neighborhood festivals, and they actually can do any kind of art. Silk screening, painting, digital photography, collage, you name it. That thing can be tricked to do anything. It's a specially designed van that they can trick into being an art studio. And this isn't outreach as we usually think of it, where you go, do the art, and walk away. This really is relationship building. This is about, there are always people from Fleischer there, registration materials, they get to know the people, they ask them, talk to them, really get to know them well. One thing that they do, for example, is they did this program, Building Community Bridges, where they took Color Wheels to the same park. They had an artist residency in a park, in Mifflin Square Park. If you know Philadelphia, it's like the kind of thing where you're in the car and you want to turn towards there and your friends just take the wheel. It's a very, very challenging neighborhood. Fleischer was there, and they were showing art. They had a residency in the park that was ongoing. That was come to us. They also have Dibujo Básico. This is their their first bilingual class, the bilingual drawing class. One thing that they heard in their research is that the target audience that they want has non-traditional schedules. Many of them work in restaurants at night. They don't work during the day. So they heard, actually, but we have Monday night off. So they started offering Dibujo Básico, and it has been at capacity for the past few years since they've offered it, which has been fantastic. Also, welcome us. That was come to us and show us what you do. Now here's welcome us, and this was very powerful. What they did is they really transformed their institutional culture. What they wanted to do is let everyone on staff know what they were up to. Like, this is an initiative that's going to happen, this is who we're becoming. And it wasn't just the executive director saying, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. It was conversations about what does that mean for us, which is really important. Because just imagine, imagine that you're used to serving that lovely suburban woman from New Jersey, and you're all of a sudden told, actually, wait a minute, now our priority is these undocumented folks, people that may not be familiar with our institution. If you've been at the institution for years and you're a staff member, you're scared, if you're not a human being, right? You are scared if you're a human being, you're scared. That was a place where they could talk about it and say, no, this is not changing who we are, but it's becoming more inclusive. Letting those folks in. We're all valued here. It also gave them the tools. They had workshops to help people. They had a cultural competency training, which was a series of workshops to help people understand and learn how to talk to people and appreciate that not everybody has their background. So all these things they did. And they did site visits to community partners, which was wonderful. They actually took everybody from the board down to all the part-time staff members and went out to temples and work employment centers, the Italian market, which I would have liked to have done that. But they went to the community partners and actually saw the community. And that really puts a human face on it. I was talking to one of the board members, and she said, after she'd gotten back from one of the Buddhist temples and seen how it had been, at one time it had been a synagogue, but now the Jews were gone, and the Buddhists were here, and it became a Buddhist temple. And they're like, this is so important, we have to do this. Doing those things really made it become part of the fabric of the organization. I mentioned, actually, let me go back, I just killed my ending here. I mentioned to you that one of the things that's so important, if you're getting a disinclined audience, remember I said, if you're going after a disinclined audience, it's not about making it free or changing the format. You have to change perceptions of yourself. You have to chip away at perceptions of elitism sometimes, make the art sound interesting. And Fleischer has done that. And they recognize they have work to do. But this is data from visitor surveys saying the number that Fleischer cares about serving these audiences. South Philly residents, and people in Philadelphia know what South Philly means. It's a very mixed neighborhood. People with non-US heritage and non-English speakers. And those numbers have gone up. This is really hard to do. Not only that, they've seen actually the number of neighborhood and children that are taking part in classes on site. I'm not talking about color wheels or any of the, what you might think of as outreach. I'm talking about they register and come on site and take classes has gone up. I mean, it's just incredible because they really didn't think they would have luck with this crowd, and they absolutely have. I have some video, but I don't think I can turn it on because I don't know where the computer is. Is it up here?
It's right over there.
Okay. This is Magda Martinez. She's the director of programs at Fleischer.
But I also think there was a perception that this place was for other kinds of people, not me. And that actually was across race and ethnic group. It was really a class distinction that people were perceiving. Like, this is for those kinds of people, and I'm a working class kind of person, so I don't actually fit into this world. And it was really helpful to have the research team and Bob, Harlow really talk to us about that is actually the slowest moving needle and the hardest needle to move. Right? It's like a first impression.
And it's almost a mirror. I mean, it tells you, look at yourself, look at your entry, look at your materials, look at your language, look at your own self. It's a tough mirror to see sometimes. You don't recognize what you thought was out of the
Yeah, it's interesting. Magda was so, and that's Magda Martinez, she and her team were so smart because one of the practices, one of the things that people did that was smart was they said, okay, if they come, then what? And Magda used to say that, they can come, but then what? They can come, but then what? And she would say that because they actually made a lot of mistakes. You know, one time if they had a street festival, and they did all this work to get, they got Latino, Mexican performers, Mexican artists to come with lead activities. But and they actually got a lot of, and it's mostly Mexican in that neighborhood from Latin America. When they arrived on site, there was no directional signage, there was no Spanish speakers to help them. So it's sort of like they did great on one side, but then in the other, it wasn't quite there. They had to keep thinking through what to do. One of the things that's so critical, you know, be prepared for what you wish for. If they come, then what? And it's hard to know because, you know, actually the other gentleman who was sitting with Magda was Chris Taylor of the Clay Studio. They've had crazy success. If you want to see an organization that's been transformed by audience research, they have actually tripled their revenue of classes. And their enrollment's gone through the roof. And he's like, there are no models to follow. We don't know what to do. We get caught by surprise all the time. Think it through as much as you can. It really is a 360-degree experience. So if they get welcomed by one place, that welcome should be on site. You know, going back to Fleischer, you know, the Southeast Asian, one of the Southeast Asian community groups, it was wonderful. They did a tour of the facility. They went and talked to the group and said, you know, come and take classes. You should do this. And they were very friendly, those that actually went out there. But then actually some of the families went to Fleischer on site and they were met with a registration form in English that they didn't know what to do with. People were kind of cold. It is, you have to think that through. It's hard though because you never know what's going to happen, you know. Also, you know, when you're serving, you're going to be serving a lot of time new audiences, but also at the same time your traditional audiences. And you need to talk to both. This is something, I guess I shouldn't have been so surprised by this. This was a big source of tension. Because sometimes, like at Pacific Northwest Ballet it happened, you know, all of a sudden there were teens, actually, Ellen Walker, the executive director's mother, her friend said, there's a goth in the balcony. Seriously. She's so embarrassed, but yes, that's going to happen. And people are, but think about it, you know, all of a sudden the organization is changing. Board members may say, who are we becoming? What's happening? You have to communicate to both audiences. You know, we just finished, we actually revisited one of the case study organizations, San Francisco Girls Chorus. And they had success in bringing in a new class of patrons. But the traditional patrons were kind of wondering, well, what about us? What about us? And board members were wondering, who are we becoming? And the executive director at the time, Melanie Smith, she said to me, you know, Bob, I spent so much time trying to get the new audience and figuring out how to communicate to them, I forgot to communicate to my own board and my own audience. If I could do it again, I would do that. She said to me, you cannot communicate enough. I thought telling them one time would help. No, they have to see over and over again, this organization is staying who it is, but it's becoming more inclusive, or whatever it might be. Pacific Northwest Ballet actually has a great example of this. In response to people like the executive director's mother, and they thought, you know what, we have to have We have to have teens feel welcome here. They cannot have somebody, because actually teens were asked, how'd you get these tickets? What are you doing here? I mean, they don't dress the same as some of the older adults, and they were, like I said, teen ticks, you get the best tickets in the house if they're available. And they were getting some looks like, hey, the season ticket holder, where's Isabel? She's been here all the time. What happened to her? And so what Pacific Northwest Ballet, in every single program now, they put in this thing that says, welcome teens. This is in all their programs. Tells teens, we love you, but it also tells the current audience, we need these guys. They're so important to us. And they are, because if we don't get them now, we're going to lose ballet. So it says, the first line, which you can't see, wondering who that young ballet goer is sitting in that seat next to you. And it goes in and talks about the partnership with Teen Ticks. Okay. One thing I want to say is all the things that I've talked about, I want to just bring us back to the points that I opened with. All the things that I talked about, all the effective practices, what they did for organizations was they helped keep the initiative on the front burner. They helped keep it on the front burner. And they also were really about building relationships that matter, that took time to do. And the relationships that they built, because the organizations did the research, because they were true to who they were, they delivered experiences that the audience would like, and they delivered experiences that the organizations felt comfortable delivering. Nobody felt, is this who we are? Why are we doing this? Those two things brought together really ended up with initiatives that were very sticky and had results that lasted after the funding at the Wallace Foundation was over. Thank you.